Hello everyone, it is me, Posey here, and this is the first episode of my new series, Rapid Reviews, where I quickly just talk about my thoughts on new media, like movies, shows, games, etc., etc. So I just got back from watching Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, and I'm going to tell you my thoughts on this movie. Now, I was anticipating this movie quite a while before I'd seen it. A lot of other people were saying it went really hard, that it was good, etc., etc., and now I have never personally played D&D, and I don't know very much about it, but I am very much a roleplay guy, and the concept of D&D sounds very interesting to me, and I was very curious to see how they would adapt that onto the big screen for a movie. And also, my brother is really into D&D, so he came along with me to this movie, and I'm pleased to report that we both enjoyed it quite a lot. I guess I should start off by saying that it is pretty accessible to new viewers. Like, you don't really have to be a D&D fan to understand the movie in any way, because they do decent, well-integrated exposition for, like, all the characters and their roles in the story. And, like, none of the stuff really... It all feels natural. Like, it doesn't feel like it's all kind of, like, forced in to be references to the games. Obviously, the game, it is a reference to the game when they bring in like an item from the game or, whatever. That's obviously a reference, and it's for like the nerds in the crowd, but it's all like naturally integrated into the story enough so that like a casual viewer can watch the movie and not be confused as to where the thing came from. It's all stuff that's useful to getting the characters along the quest to the end of the movie, etc., etc. All pretty well integrated, and I didn't feel confused at any point. Like, I perfectly understood the plot, even without having played the games. So, as an intro point to D&D, I feel like this is a pretty good movie to watch. Now, obviously, me never having played the game before, I can't really say if it's a good adaptation in terms of story, but from my understanding, D&D doesn't really have, like, a set story at all, because it's a roleplay game. Like, you kind of make up the story as you go. So, at the end of the day, they could have made up literally any story, and it would technically have been a faithful adaptation since they, like, incorporated aspects of the game regardless. Now, regardless of its ties to the Dungeons & Dragons game, in general, I just thought this was a pretty good movie, as an overall, film. Let me get, like, a few things out of the way really fast. The music is pretty good. It's by Lorne Balfe, I believe. There's no way I pronounce his name right, but he's done a few tracks that I'm a pretty big fan of. Such as, for example, the OST of Mission Impossible Fallout, and also the OST of Black Widow, which admittedly I do not think is a good movie, but it does have some pretty good OSTs, so, congrats to Lorne Balfe. I think he did a good job with this movie. The music sounds like very fantastical and medieval and such, which is, a perfect fit for the movie that it's being composed for. Visually, I also think this movie was pretty good. There's a lot of practical effects in use, and like not as much CGI from my understanding, and the way they did it with the practical effects is really cool. Like, they did a really good job with that stuff, and they made a lot of things look natural when they really weren't. Like, there was tons of, like, good costumes, good set designs, just, like, a lot of, like, alternate, like, fantasy species, but made with practical effects instead of CGI. Obviously, both can be good if they're done well, but this movie's use of practical effects was really impressive to me, and I really dug that aspect about it, for sure. In general, the movie also just looks very nice. It's very vibrant and bright with like, how its colors, kind of come together. And that's perfect for the tone of the movie as well, since it's supposed to be a bit of a lighthearted comedy, almost like a kind of like a skit turned into a movie. I'll go more in depth into this later. The story is pretty simple. It's nothing groundbreaking, it's nothing profound, but I thought it was pretty enjoyable. I don't really want to spoil the story of the movie. Again, it is pretty simple. I could explain it very easily, but I feel like you should go into this blind, because I did that, and I thought that the story was really nice and heartwarming. Again, it wasn't really, like, super complex or profound, but this is a D&D movie. It's supposed to be based on just, like, a roleplay game where you and your friends are having fun, and that's totally the vibe I got from, like, the story and all that. Overall, I thought the characters were pretty fun, too. Again, not super complicated. Like, they kind of have, like, pretty simple arcs, pretty simple character traits, but they're done well. Obviously, characters don't need to be complex to be enjoyable on the big screen. I've always thought that's kind of a ridiculous viewpoint, like you have to make your characters super complex and like with 5 million layers of characterization for them to be decent. No, these characters are perfectly fine for the story they're in. I'd even say they're pretty enjoyable. And I like the protagonist a lot. His name is Edgin. He's basically like a thief character. I like how he's not really like a hero character, even though he is like a good guy at heart. He does have his flaws. They don't shy away from mentioning them. It's nice to see a fantasy story where the guy is just kind of, he's a bit complicated. He's, well, not complicated in the sense that he's got like a complex characterization, blah 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 blah, but complicated from a moral standpoint. Like he's not like some valiant noble hero. There is a guy who's kind of like that. His name is Zank, but it's played entirely for laughs because he's like the one serious guy in the crowd of people who are quipping, etc., etc. I think it's pretty funny how they do that. But yeah, Edgin's not really like that, and I think that works well for the story because it ties into like the heart at the center of the plot and just like the character arc for our main character. And sorry if I'm stumbling over my words. That's just a thing I do sometimes. Also, there's the villain character. His name is Forge Fitzwilliam, which is a brilliant name. He's played by Hugh Grant, and he is probably one of the funniest characters in the movie, if not the funniest. He does an excellent performance, Hugh Grant does, and really like sells the goofiness, the pettiness of the character. He's not a complicated villain. He's just like a rich asshole who wants to profit. He's not, well, I mean, he is likable in like terms of how he's performed and how he's written, like with the jokes, but he's obviously a character you're supposed to root against. And I kind of get Jack Horner vibes from him in a sense. Obviously, Jack Horner is much better. Like, there's no way Forge could possibly have even come close to meeting the comedic genius that is Jack Horner. But, I mean, just kind of slightly getting there is still pretty good by my standards. So, yeah, Forge Fitzwilliam is a certified good villain in my book. The actual true... Well, I guess I shouldn't spoil this, but he's not really like the full villain. There's kind of like a greater villain in the shadows, and I'm not getting into that. It's spoilers for the movie, and I'm gonna try to remain spoiler free in all of my reviews. Comedy wise, this movie is pretty funny, I'd say. It's kind of structured in a way that's similar to, I don't really know how to word this properly, but it's kind of structured in a way that's similar to, from my understanding, Thor Love and Thunder. I don't know if that really makes a lot of sense, but I'm just kind of saying, like, Thor Love and Thunder is kind of like a movie-long skit, basically. It's got, like, a lot of skit comedy in it, and this kind of gave me the same vibe here. But there are two crucial differences. First of all, the movie justifies its tone in this case, and second of all, it's actually funny, so that's a bit of a difference. Granted, I don't think every single joke lands. Like, there is a decent amount of dialogue that I thought was a bit eye-roll inducing. I felt like, it was mostly the quips, because there were quips and gags. And some of the dialogue I felt like needed a little bit more time in the pot of wittiness. It needed to stir a little bit longer. And like there were some like little quips that kind of just hit me, and I was like, yeah, that didn't really do it for me. You could have done a bit better. That wasn't super satisfactory. And sometimes, yeah, my eyes were rolling. I was a bit upset. Well, I wouldn't say upset, obviously, but a little bit underwhelmed. But for the most part, I would say that the jokes did land in this movie. They missed like maybe 20 to 30% of the time, and they hit like the rest of the 70-80% of the time, is what I can say. And this movie has a lot of creative gags that I just thought were absolutely hilarious. It is not like a riot the whole way through, but it's got a lot of funny moments that are worth laughing at, especially with, as I said before, the villain, Forge Fitzwilliam. He's pretty hilarious. Another thing I really love about this movie is just how fucking creative it is. Like, it has so much cool shit that's going on in its fight sequences. It's got so much cool shit that's going on in its heist sequences. It's like planning sequences, all that sort of jazz. I really can't get into it much because I don't want to spoil, but like, there's so much cool shit that happens. And I was just like, it was kind of like the feeling like you see something on screen that's really like creatively done, and you just kind of like get that little dopamine rush in your brain, like, hell yeah, they did a thing, and that's really cool. And that was kind of me watching this movie and like getting that experience. And man, I mean, it does seem a bit superficial when you put it like that, and when I put it like that, but who cares? I had a lot of fun, and I feel like the The movie just kept like a lot of fun, quirky stuff coming, and it didn't feel cringe for the most part. And just a lot of cool shit that happened, especially in that last part, like especially in the final battle. I really, really want to talk about it, but I shouldn't spoil. It's just, go watch the movie for yourself, you'll see exactly what I mean. So yeah, I've rambled on about this movie for a bit, and at the end of the day, my ultimate conclusion is that Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is a pretty good movie, pretty great even, by enjoyability standards. Of course, I'm not talking objectively. I haven't really analyzed the film on that sort of level, but for my enjoyment alone, I would give this a solid 8 out of 10. It's pretty good. I'd recommend it. It might not be for everyone with its style of comedy, so I don't really blame you if you don't share the same opinion. But for me, this was a really fun watch, and I'm glad I went to see it, especially with my brother, who very much geeked out over all the D&D stuff, and that was pretty cool. So, yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!